Hey everyone, this is RyGuyGaming here today, back with another Nostalgia Let's Play. Today we are going to be playing Croc, Legend of the Gobbos. Now this is another PlayStation 1 game, and it's one that I've been wanting to do for a while. In fact, I have done this series, I have started this series before, and then I just never finished it. Not that I got very far anyways. But we're just gonna jump right in. And we will get into the game. So this game is broken up into stages and levels. So we're on, level 1, stage 1, or island 1. I guess that's how I should say it. It's islands and then levels. So this is island 1, level 1, I guess. And it's called And So the Adventure Begins. So we'll go ahead and start. And while you're waiting for the game to load, you get a nice little thing of Croc walking across the screen. I'll probably cut that out in future episodes. But anyways, here we are in the game. Now, there are a lot of things I want to talk about, and this first level here is pretty short, so a lot of it's probably just going to be me standing around and running around so that I can talk about all the things I want to. So first of all, the game is one of the earlier PlayStation 1 games I've got. I've had it for as long as I can remember. And it was always one that I loved to play as a kid. It just has a lot of bright colors. The music in this game is spectacular. I don't know if you listened to the music during the intro cutscene or at the main menu or right now, but seriously, the best music in probably any video game I've ever heard. Hands down. Easily a soundtrack you can just chill to. And yeah, I never finished it as a kid because the later levels do get significantly harder. This is a platformer collectathon, a lot of tricky jumps and stuff. But anyways, so yeah, you play as Croc, he kind of runs around. Typically, there's two ways to play this game. You can either play with the stick or with the D-pad. I highly recommend the D-pad, and let me tell you why. So if you have the, analog mode enabled, you're playing with the sticks. Croc controls kind of like a regular 3D game character, like when you run forward or when you run to the right or when you move the stick to the left. When you move the stick behind you, he tries to run backwards. And movement is relative to the camera. However, there is kind of a little bit of a weird startup when you do this. If you look, when I push the stick straight to the left, Croc kind of rotates to the left a little bit before he starts running left. And this is because of the way that the game was, what I think how it was originally intended to be played, which I'll talk about in a second. But while you have analog mode enabled, you can also use the right stick to actually move the camera, which is quite insane. I cannot think of another PlayStation 1 game off the top of my head where the right stick even does anything, much less move the camera like you would expect it to. Now, it is backwards. If you push it to the left, the camera moves right. If you push it to the right, the camera moves left, but it doesn't take that long to get used to. And then down is down and up is up, but you don't have a super big range of motion with that. And then, of course, if I push square, I can tail attack enemies. It's kind of like Crash's spin, where, you just kill whoever you run into while you're doing it. You can jump, you can ground pound. I'll talk more about ground pounding in a little bit. And then you have on circle, you have a quick turnaround. And this is good for when you're using the D-pad controls, which I'll talk about now and I'll switch to. So if you're on the D-pad controls, which again, I highly recommend, Croc actually behaves with tank controls. Now, I know that sounds awful, but I think this is the way the game was meant to be played because it just makes Croc so much easier to control. Especially in the air. So with the tank controls, with the D-pad, if you turn left, Croc will just rotate left. If you push forward, he'll move forward, and if you push back, he'll walk backwards. This is all relative to Croc and not the camera. You do move sideways. You can sidestep if you push R1 or L1, just like in Tomb Raider. And you can push R2 and L2 to adjust the camera a little bit. You can push B to quick turnaround. So this, you know, gets around the problem of having to slowly turn around like this. You can do it while you're standing, you can do it while you're running, and he kind of like destroys his back, or I don't even know what the flip he's doing here. Or you can do it in the air, which is pretty cool. Now, about the mid-air controls, which I'll talk about later, actually, now that I think about it. Maybe I'll save that till we actually do some jumping. So, let's talk about the game itself. So, enemies, you've probably noticed I've killed this guy a couple times. They respawn after a little while because they're more just obstacles over everything. Now, like I said, this game is a collectathon, so typically you want to be grabbing things like these crystals. Now, this first crystal here is actually kind of a trick. You'll notice the crystals I picked up before are just, you know, I just picked them up and they went into my little inventory thing here. And the way those work is if I get attacked, they kind of function like Sonic's rings, where they're basically your health. So as long as you have one crystal on you, you won't die. If you don't have any, you'll instantly die as soon as you get hit. So you want to make sure you at least have one crystal on you so you have that buffer. And you want to make sure you try to pick the crystals up when you get hit, you know, so that, again, you have that buffer. This crystal is a secret one that turns into a gem. I'll talk about gems later in the level, but they are one of the main collectibles you want to grab. This one is just a more obvious gem. It doesn't, you know, it isn't disguised as a crystal, so we can grab this. Croc can ground pound, like I said, if you double tap X to jump and X to ground pound. These guys right here are the Gobbos. They're your main collectible. There's 6 in every level, and if you get all 6 in half the levels on an island, you unlock a secret level. If you get all 6 on the other half of the island, you unlock the second secret level for that island. If you unlock and complete all the secret levels in the game, you unlock the true ending. Yes, this game does have 2 endings. One of them is a, you know, you beat the game ending, and the other one is the 100% ending, because collecting all the Gobbos is what's considered 100%. Now, I did it without talking about it. You saw me ground pound on that platform 3 times. That's actually a secret. I think I did manage to find it as a kid. In fact, I know I did. But it's just interesting. There aren't secrets in every level, but when you do find them, typically they'll just give you crystals and extra lives, and then you can go back to the main level. Extra lives are important in this game because if you lose all of that, so every time you die you lose a life. If you lose all your lives, you don't just get kicked out of the level or anything, you get kicked out of the game. You get kicked back to the main menu, and if you haven't manually saved recently, or if you haven't written down the password for the level you're on, you have to start over. So you want to make sure that you're either using save states or that you are manually saving through the menus in this game, or that you're writing down the passcode. This is kind of in that Crash 1 era where developers really hadn't figured out whether they wanted to make the games like arcade games or, you know, actually let you save your game. Now that I'm jumping a little bit down here, I can talk about the mid-air controls in Croc. So in the air, Croc actually behaves differently than he does on the ground, at least when moving side to side and rotating. So on the ground, when you push left and right, Croc rotates, but in the air, Croc moves left and right when you push left and right. See, in the air, I move left and right, on the ground, I rotate. However, if I still have the option to rotate in the air if I want to. If I use R1 or L1 while in the air, Croc will actually spin in place. And so you can kind of, you know, do like combinations of this where you're running, spinning, sliding through the air. The only thing that gets kind of tricky with that is that it is kind of backwards from what you're used to, right? On the ground, rotating is the D-pad. In the air, sliding is the D-pad. On the ground, sidestepping is the R1 and L1. In the air, rotating is L1 and R1. So it is backwards. But yeah, that's enough about Croc's controls for now. Let's move on. So the levels in Croc are broken up into tiny little like self-contained areas. For the most part, they don't typically lead into each other very like at all. What I mean by that is you can pretty much take any one of these areas and staple them onto each other in any order, and it would not really change anything. So yeah. In fact, it might be kind of an interesting thing. You could make like a randomizer for this game probably where, you know, you just came out of a different area. And that could be kind of fun. Of course, the thing that does tie the levels together is the amount of Gobbos. And where they are and everything. So we'll grab this guy here. I'm just trying to not get hit by that snake. Now, it isn't a problem in this level, but I do want to talk about it. I am going to be using the emulator save state feature in this game. And the reason is because this game is pretty hard. So whenever you die, you typically get sent back to the beginning of a room and lose a life. Which isn't too bad, you know, that's not bad. But, like I said before, oh yeah, you can vault up onto things, by the way. But like I said before, if you lose all your lives, you get kicked back to the main menu. I'm not going to use it super often, the save state, and when I do, I'll try to edit it out. But basically, it's just so that I don't, you know, end up in a situation where I have literally no lives and it just makes the video worse. This well is interesting because it has this worm that pops out. I think this worm kind of freaked out at everyone as a kid. But yeah, sometimes the worms will have secrets underneath them though. You'll notice that when I stood next to this door, now that I have all 5 gems, it opened for me. So what this is this is kind of like the bonus room or whatever. If you get all 5 gems in a level, there's 5 gems in every level, you unlock the bonus room, which will usually typically give you more crystals, and it always contains the 6th Gobbo. So in this one, it's not very hard. You just jump on the jellies to get the key, you grab the balloon, float over here, and we get the last Gobbo. And like I said, that's all 6, so we're good, and I'm gonna grab this life. And to exit the level, you just hit these gongs, and your little bird friend will come get you. Now, depending on how many crystals you have, they get rolled over into your bank here. When you get a 100, it will give you an extra life. These levels these crystals are safe. They don't go away, you know. But yeah, when they roll over to 100, you get a life, it goes back to 0, right? So that was actually the end of the first level. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep this series very light, and we're just going to play through 1 level an episode. So that's actually the end of the episode here. I think I covered everything I want to though, so this one was a little bit longer than they typically will be, especially for the first couple islands, where the levels are pretty short. Like on this first island, the levels are like 2 minutes if you just run through them really fast. But so far we have 100%, and I'm going to try to continue to do that. There are a couple levels that I've never 100%ed before, so that might be interesting to try to figure out. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'll join me next time. Maybe check out the soundtrack to this game if you want to hear some great music. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!